Thank you for making a date with us this Thursday evening. I am Sunday Gloria Oboj with Uctv News. The Uganda Law Society, ULS, has vowed to challenge the Supreme Court's recent ruling in the case of Attorney General versus Michael Kabaziguruka at the East African Court of Justice during their weekly press briefing at their Kamucha offices here in Kampala. ULS raised concerns over the judgment's lack of definitive abolition, arguing that it leaves room for continued human rights abuses. They also criticized the ambiguous language in the ruling, which could still allow military courts to try civilians through amendments.
The Uganda Law Society is appalled by the government's highly publicized intention to promote and fast-track a bill that will restore the condemned status quo of trials of civilians in military courts. This move is a blatant disregard for human rights, the rule of law, and the Constitution. We strongly object to this proposed legislation, which undermines the principles of democracy and justice. The ULS, through its recently launched high-profile case unit, has anxiously studied the Supreme Court's recent decision in Attorney General versus Michael Kabaziguruka, Constitutional Appeal number 2 of 2021. We have discovered that this decision raises grave concerns about the judiciary's commitment to upholding the Constitution, human rights, and rule of law. Our key concerns: lack of definitive abolition. The Supreme Court's decision fails to explicitly abolish the practice of trying civilians in military courts, leaving room for continued human rights abuses. 2. Double-edged language. The court's language suggests that military courts can still try civilians if given prior jurisdiction through amendments, undermining the separation of powers and the rule of law. Thirdly, error in classification. The Supreme Court incorrectly referred to the General Court Martial as a court of law, whereas Article 210 of the Constitution classifies it as a tribunal. Fourthly, prospective versus retrospective annulment. The court's decision to apply prospective annulment ignores past injustices and denies victims access to effective remedies, perpetuating a culture of impunity. In the constitutional breaches, the decision raises concerns about breaches of Article 2.2 and 23.7 of the Constitution, undermining the principles of democracy and human rights. Number 6, unfairness of DPP participation. The Supreme Court's decision enables the Director of Public Prosecution to participate in the transfer of cases from military courts to civilian courts in an arbitrary and unregulated manner. This lack of clear guidelines and timelines for the transfer process may result in unfair and discriminatory treatment of accused persons, delayed or denied access to justice, undermining of the integrity of the judicial process, potential for selective prosecution and manipulation of the justice system, and erosion of public trust in the independence and impartiality of the judiciary. It is the considered opinion of Uganda Law Society that the Supreme Court's decision reflects a breach of the rule of law, human rights, democracy, that is the separation of powers in Uganda, and other foundational principles such as transparency, accountability, and social justice, which are enshrined in the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community. Accordingly, Uganda Law Society hereby notifies the government of its intention to challenge this decision at the East African Court of Justice, citing violations of the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community, unless the Society receives a prompt response from the government regarding the actions it intends to take to address these concerns.
And as the government drafts the 2025-2026 national budget, the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, CSBUG, has called for a significant reduction in expenditure from 72.1 trillion Uganda shillings to 57.4 trillion Uganda shillings. During the Civil Society pre-budget dialogue held at Imperial Royal Hotel in Kampala, CSBUG urged the government to eliminate wasteful spending and reduce reliance on foreign loans to ease the burden on taxpayers.
The government of Uganda will be spending around 1.9 billion on beddings and clothes. In the age of email and WhatsApp and scanning, we are going to spend around 2.8 billion on postage and courier services. We still believe that we can actually repurpose this budget and spend more on some items that are important.
Government nga bwetugamba nti eyagala tutunulire ebintu ebiyamba omuntu wa bulijjo ekendeeze n'ensaasaanya okwejalabya pate gavumenti ya pate mikolo sente ezo zonna singa tuzikwata ne tuziteeka mu bintu ebiyamba omuntu wa bulijjo eggwanga lyaffe lisobola okukulaakulana.
The priorities, like we discussed, come from the accelerator actions, starting with full monetization of the economy. We have agro-industrialization, we have tourism development, and then we have mineral development, including oil and gas, and then STI, science, technology and innovation, of course not forgetting ICT and the creative arts. So those are our accelerator actions. Now when you go to enablers, you can't run business, you can't do business, or you can't deliver what you want without an enabling infrastructure. You must have the infrastructure, be it transport, you must have a facilitative legal regime, you must have good security, peace, rule of law, you must have, of course, efficiency in how you operate. So most of these are enabling our ATM so that we deliver something that is credible and have a budget that works.
How does an ordinary person benefit from this budget? But there is also the issue of social protection. And I'll give an example. The social protection budget for last year was 144 billion. Even this year it has remained stagnant at 144 billion. But already with the 144 billion for the current financial year, there was a big shortfall of 21 billion, which meant that 109,000 older persons on SAGE are not going to receive their benefits for the last quarter of the financial year. So if there is no change in that budget, and there are also new people qualifying every year, it means more people are going to miss out on those benefits.
Away from what is happening in the international scene, let's take a look at what is making history today. And that's it from Uctv News Desk. I am Sunday Gloria Aboch. A very good evening and good night.